Hey everybody, welcome to your Crosswind service online. My name is Jody Tay and I'm the associate pastor here, and I am glad you're with us because today we're continuing on in our series, Nothing But Good News, the gospel, Jesus, and the 6 things we build our hope on. We're really excited to share this series with you because each week we're going to give you a piece of the gospel message, something that is easy to remember, a truth you can really hold on to, so that by the end of this series, you'll be able to take all of the pieces and link them together and have a very clear understanding of the enormous gift that Jesus has given each one of us. For us here at Crosswinds, we believe that the reality of what Jesus has done for us not only has the power to bring you hope, it has the power to totally and radically transform your life for the better, and we think that's exciting. And so today we're diving into week 2, and I think that by the end of it, you will realize why, at the end of each week, we're able to say that this series is truly full of good news. Well, let me tell you about a few other good things that are happening around here. The first one is about Lead Bold. Lead Bold is a leadership community that works to support and encourage women in ministry leadership. We actually held our first inaugural conference here last September, and many of you were part of that and expressed how meaningful it was for you. Well, this year on September 12th, Lead Bold will hold its 2nd annual leadership conference. And we just need to tell you, while the conference will be virtual in light of COVID-19, it is still focused on connecting, resourcing, and encouraging ministry leaders. And so if you're a ministry leader here at Crosswinds, I want to encourage you to join us on September 12th. What you need to know is that tickets go on sale Monday. And so for more information about the conference, if you're considering it, and to buy your tickets, visit the website at leadingbold.org. Well, the other good thing I want to tell you about is that during this time of not being able to gather in a large group on Sundays, we've actually been gathering in small groups here on campus on Sundays through various classes that we've been offering. Of course, we've stayed in groups of 25 or less outside, socially distanced, of course. But we just finished round 1 of our classes and they were so much fun. It was so good to be on this campus together. Well, our second set of classes starts in just 2 weeks on August 23rd. We've got 3 classes we're offering, and registration for those classes starts today. If you feel comfortable, we'd love to have you consider joining us for one of them. To read the class descriptions and to register, go to crosswindschurch.org and click on the banner at the top that says Creekside Classes and see if something piques your interest, because we'd love to see you here on Sunday. Finally, I want to encourage you to consider giving to Crosswinds. We are so grateful for how you give to this ministry, and we can't do it without your help. There are 3 ways for you to continue or consider supporting us. You can mail a check, give online, or you can text us. And again, for those of you who have continued to support us during this season, we are grateful for how you support the ministry of this church. If you were here with us last week, you know we're doing something a little different through this series. We're actually saving worship for the end of our service time. And the reason for that is worship is meant to create room for you to respond. And as we move throughout this series, we're going to give you some pretty important things to think about. So it seems kind of odd just to end the service without giving you some space to process. So I want to encourage you, stick around after the message. Take advantage of the time and space that is being created for you to worship and respond to what God might be telling you.
The serpent, snake, was the savviest of all of the creatures in the Creator's perfect planet. The reptile surveyed the scene with keen snake eyes. Streetwise, armed with an arsenal of plausible lies, he slithered up to Eve, the woman, from her blind side, preserving the element of surprise. And he said, "Hello, child. How was your day?" I overheard your conversation. I just had one simple question. Exactly what did the Creator say? That thing about the tree, the evil and the good, how do you know that you understood? Did he really say what you think you heard? Maybe your mind twisted up the words. Did he say hands off all the plants? Don't look, don't touch, don't taste? What a waste that would be. Eve, the woman, pointed out the tree with the taboo. The tree of the knowing, the good and evil too. She told the snake that God had made it drop dead clear that everything else was free, every other tree. But if they took one tiny taste of the fruit of this particular one, they would absolutely, positively crash and burn. Said the snake, faking genuine concern. The deity's afraid of what you're gonna learn. With just one bite, you be just like him. Eyes wide open, knowing the heights of what humans can do, knowing the depths, the despicable too. God would have no tactical advantage over you. You and your man could have the run of the place, total control over the food you eat, the life you live, the path you choose. With just one small bite, you could gain the whole green world. And that means that God of yours would lose. The woman Eve walked closer and closer to the tree. She sniffed and felt the fruit against her cheek. Totally wise with open eyes, she said, "What's wrong with that? Maybe my man and I were born for this. Born to know, born to control, born to rule." She swallowed hard, and it was done. She gave some to her covenant partner, Adam. He opened his mouth and gobbled it down, and the universe was silent. It was the cool part of the day, and God was walking through the land he made, his ecosystem so magnificently put together, about to erode, about to implode before his sad and timeless eyes. He took one long, last look and kissed the innocents goodbye. Adam, where you hiding, son? Eve, girl, what have you done? Look around. It's broken now. Under a curse. From bad to worse. Now your eyes are wise and clear. Now you know shame. Now you know fear. Now you know you're naked. Now you run for cover. Well, here's what's gonna happen. Life will be shorter. Pain will be greater. Work will be harder. Grinding it out by the sweat on your brow, the blood on your hands. Eve and Adam, even the bond you have will now be strained, slightly off, distorted, reframed. And as for you, reptile snake, Adam will crush your head. You will strike and bite his heel. You will feel the weight of the consequences of what you've done for eons. a sigh. It's broken now, he said. And the serpent, he just smiled.
So, I'm standing here in my garage. I apologize. This is not the most picturesque location to film something like this. This house was built in the 1960s. It's your standard suburban 1,600 square foot home. It has parts of it that have been upgraded and other parts that have not been touched. And this garage is one of those places. But I have you in here for a reason today because I want to talk to you about something I was doing in here just a few months ago. We were redoing the upstairs of our house. New floors, we did some work in the kids' bathroom, and new doors throughout the upstairs. And I knew that we'd be doing a lot of painting in this remodel, walls and ceilings, all of that. But I also knew that between bedroom doors, bathroom doors, closet doors, we're gonna be painting like 13 or 14 doors, and it made sense to me to do that in this garage. I got out a couple of drop cloths, these right here. I got out a roller and some paint brushes. I carefully leaned each door against this wall over here in our garage very strategically. And then I bribed my kids to help me paint the doors. Now, my kids had never painted doors before. I don't know if they painted much of anything. It was a good learning experience. I taught them how to do it very carefully. How to do it in such a way that paint would not get everywhere and that we would be clean. And I thought we had done pretty well. In fact, I was incredibly proud of myself and the kids. I remember thinking, I'm glad we didn't pay anyone to do this because we did this as professionally as any legit painter would have. The doors are gonna look great. My garage is gonna look like it did before we started. Now, what I will admit to you is that when we were done, we had paint all over ourselves. Our hands were covered in paint. Our shoes had big drops of paint. Our hair had speckles of paint. We were careful, but even when you're careful, you're going to get some paint on you. Well, we left the doors to dry overnight, came back the next day, moved the doors inside to be installed, and then I came back out to the garage and I rolled up these drop cloths to put everything away, and I started to notice the truth about our paint job. Or really, our carefulness. There was paint all over. Check this out. When I rolled up the drop cloth, I started seeing the white paint that we had used for the doors all over the floor, especially in the spots where there was no drop cloth. Clearly, one of us had stepped on paint that was on the drop cloth, it got on the bottom of our shoe, and we tracked it through the rest of the garage. Then I took a closer look at the walls that we had leaned the doors up against. Again, check this out. We had paint splatter all over the wall. I thought, how did we miss this yesterday? I started looking, I found paint everywhere. And the clincher was when later that day, I got out my relatively new bike to go on a ride. This is my pristine matte black bike that I keep in really good shape. And I noticed two white specks that had found their way to my seat. I could not believe it. How did this happen? My bike was on the other side of the garage. It was nowhere near the doors. But it did. And what I've learned is that when it comes to paint, it does not matter how careful you are, how cautious you try to be, it gets all over. It gets all over you. It gets all over your things. It gets all over your environment, this little world that you try to paint in. And this isn't just me. This is anyone who tries to paint. Take a look. When I was closely inspecting the damage, I found more paint on my floor, colors that we've never painted. See this blue? I have lived here 12 years. We've never painted anything this color of blue. I'm living with somebody else's paint on my floor. Somebody else who's probably trying to be careful, but got paint all over as well. Anyway, the thing is, no matter how hard you try to avoid it, you are gonna get paint on you and the stuff around you. Well, paint is gonna be a metaphor for something we're gonna talk about today. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to it. Let me remind you what we're doing here in this series of messages. I'm walking you through these 6 things that explain the good news that we find in the Bible about Jesus. And we're using an acrostic to explain it. An acrostic is one of those words that gets spelled out with different phrases or sentences. And our acrostic is gospel, G-O-S-P-E-L. Again, gospel means good news. And on the last video, I explained G, right? G, God created you to be with Him. Now, I won't take time and re-explain that right here. If for some reason you haven't watched that part, you've got to watch these in order. Go back, take a look. It's less than 20 minutes. But I hinted at something in that last video that while God created you to be with Him, something gets in the way of that. And I want to talk about that with you right now. To be honest, just saying that something gets in the way of you and God being with each other, it makes it seem like this is not good news. Fair. I will give you that. But I think that even this has actually got some good news to it, and by the end of this video, you'll see why. Last video, we left off with Adam and Eve in a garden with God, and I said something in that video. I said this idea of being with God, it's actually a lot like heaven. It's paradise. Adam and Eve are with each other. They're with God's beautiful creation. They're with Him. But something happens. God has given them an instruction to not eat fruit from this one tree. And we read in Genesis 3 that they do, both of them. They disobey God and they eat from the tree and something happens. They immediately become aware of something, that they're naked. All right, let me show you Genesis 3:7. Take a look at this with me. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and they made loincloths for themselves. They made coverings. Now, just to be clear, nakedness was not the problem. God created them that way. This is not a story about nakedness and the need to cover yourself up with lots of clothes. And you're going to see that in the next verses. Verse 8 says, "Then they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, and He said to him, 'Where are you?' And the man said, 'I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself.'" See, it's not really about being naked. This is a story about shame and guilt resulting in fear. And this thing in us that when we sin wants to run and hide. Okay, I just used a word for the first time in these videos that we have got to talk about: sin. How is that good news? I mean, this is such a loaded word. In our world, this word, it tends to get a little bit of a negative reaction, right? Nobody likes to talk about this word sin. And by the way, if that's you, you'd rather run and hide than talk about sin, I don't blame you. That's in your DNA. That's exactly how Adam and Eve felt. We don't want to talk about what we just did. But would you give me a few minutes to talk about it with you? Sin, if we just try to define it as simply as possible, it means disobeying God. Okay, by the way, right there, I'm using it as a verb. To sin is to disobey God, but it's more than a verb. It's a noun, right? You can commit a sin, and according to the Bible, it's a state of being. Sin is this thing that no matter how hard you try, you cannot help but get it on you. And like paint, no matter how careful you may be, you get sin on you and you get it on the things around you and it leaves a mark. Back in the 1980s, People magazine ran a survey. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it was also meant to be a little bit serious. They did a survey asking their readers about sin, and they published the results in something they created called a Sindex, where they rated sin. The survey respondents ranked certain sins compared to other sins. As you can imagine, murder, child abuse were really high. And this was 1986, right in the middle of the Cold War. So spying against your own country was really high. And then it listed some things real far down the list: swearing, illegal videotaping. Parking in a handicap spot was actually really high as well. Well, it's actually a really interesting idea, a Sindex. But what I'm going to show you in a second is that when it comes to you and God being with each other, there is no differentiation. Sin is sin. Okay, one other thing about that article, it concluded by telling us that the people who responded to the survey said they commit about 4.64 sins per month. Now, I don't know if that seems high or low to you. It seems low to me. I feel like I commit 4.64 sins an hour. But what was important about the article is that it made a really good point. We all do this. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Even when you go for an extended period of time, doing well, being good, living without crossing any lines or saying anything stupid or doing anything offensive, breaking trust in any relationships, even when you put together a string of really great behavior, it doesn't seem to matter. You always seem to get some sin on you. Can we talk about this little phrase here at the end of this sentence, fall short of the glory of God? One of the Greek words used for sin in the Bible is this word that means missing the mark. So, as you think about sin, an idea would be to picture a target and arrows being shot at it that miss the bullseye. If the mark is the center of the target, the bullseye, any arrows that miss it, whether they miss the target completely or they're just a little bit off the bullseye, guess what? Either way, they've missed the mark. Anything on the People magazine Sindex, no matter how high or how low, it misses the mark. It falls short of God's glory or his intention for you. Now, here's where this plays into the God with you thing. Sin always results in a disconnection or a separation from God. And this is the O. So let me say it again. Our sin separates us from God. G, God created us to be with him, but O, our sin separates us from God. It keeps that from happening. Now, there are a few reasons for this, and one of those I've already hinted at, but we should not gloss over it, okay? The first reason is because our sin usually results in guilt and shame, and we run and hide. We don't want to be in the presence of a holy God that we have wronged. I mean, when I wrong a friend, or I wrong my wife, whether it's big or small, that's embarrassing. And even if they don't know that I wronged them, my inclination is to feel bad and even want to run and hide from the feeling. Now, I use that word usually. It doesn't always, sin doesn't always cause shame, or I should say shame that we notice. And the reason is because we have this capacity as humans to justify our sin, to talk ourselves into thinking that we shouldn't feel bad. We say things to ourselves like, hey, everybody else is doing what I did, or I'm not even sure you could call this thing that I just did wrong, or even if it is wrong, it's really low on the Sindex, and there are bigger offenders. But even then, even when we don't feel shame or guilt, my hunch is it's still there. There's still something in us that realizes we're not hitting the mark, and it keeps us hiding from a holy God. But I said there are a few reasons that sin separates us from God. And this other reason I want to share with you has to do with the nature of who God is and what heaven is. Now, I don't want to lose you here, so make sure you're focused. Follow this. If heaven is this paradise where you and God are with each other, guess what makes paradise not paradise? Sin. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. How much sin do you think that God should allow into heaven? Assuming there's a heaven, there's a paradise that involves you with God forever, how much sin are you comfortable with having there? Like, what would be the acceptable level of sin for God to allow into paradise? Is it 5%, 0.5%, 0.05%? Let me ask you, if there was a worm in your food, how much worm is okay with you? What is the acceptable level of sin for God to bring into paradise, which at its core is all about him with you? If sin includes murder, how much murder should he allow into paradise? If it involves betrayal, how much betrayal are you comfortable with in your paradise? Pick your poison. Racism? Abuse? How much are you okay with in your paradise? Let's go lower down the Sindex. If the sin involves the FBI warning at the beginning of your movie that says it cannot be illegally duplicated or distributed, most would put that way low on the Sindex. Does your paradise allow for people stealing or giving away other people's property? So this is the other reason that sin separates us from God, because God's standard for heaven must be perfection, sinless perfection. Now, that sounds like bad news, because I'm not perfect and neither are you. But if God were to allow all of us into the eternal thing that is paradise, with sin still being a part of our makeup, we would pollute heaven. We would mess it up. And guess what? We would just turn it into hell. Oh, wait, so I haven't talked about hell yet. All right, let me give this a try. So, if heaven can be defined as God with you for eternity, what do you think that hell is? It's you separated from God for eternity. It's the absence of God in your life and all of the good that comes with that. Now, I know that within Christianity, there's a lot of different thoughts and understandings on what hell looks like. Lake of fire, torment, burning sulfur, gnashing teeth. In fact, when somebody says hell, it's probably hard for you to not have those images come to your mind. But I'll be honest, while the Bible has lots of imagery for hell, the point of the imagery was not to paint a literal picture of hell like Dante's Inferno. The point was to say, you don't want to spend eternity in the hell that is disconnection from God and all that is good. And now I'm going to say something that's either going to make you really angry with me or make you go, yes, that resonates with me. To some extent, you are already tasting hell every day. In the story of Adam and Eve, God finds out that they've sinned and they get banished from paradise. They have to leave the place where they are with God, and they enter a new place where they're separated from Him, a new place that involves work and pain and frustration. He tells them, you're going to experience a version of separation now, and it's a world where sin is going to be all around you and all the junk that goes with that. And you will now experience physical death, which they wouldn't have experienced before, because His intention was eternity with Him. Now, doesn't that sound a lot like where we live today? Let's go back to the news, what you see every day. You see a world that contains systemic injustice. Let me give you another phrase for it. A world marked by sin. And you see bullying. That's sin. And you see violence. You know what else we call that? Sin. And we see arrogance and oppression. And Romans 1 actually describes this. It says that we have been given over to the desire of our hearts. God has given us over to a world of our own creation. And what He has given us over to is a world that is separated from Him, and we have only made it worse, created more and more separation. Now, the good news that we're going to get into in future videos is that even in this problem world that we live in, God still has found ways to reconnect with us and bring some paradise to this place. But when I say that you're tasting hell right now, what I mean is you are getting a small piece of what eternity separated from God is like. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend forever in this or something worse, where even the bits of paradise that God has sprinkled into this world get pulled out. An eternity that involves no with God and His goodness. Back to the O. Our sin separates us from God now and for eternity. Now, how is this good news? How is there any good news in what it is that I'm talking about right now? Well, if you would agree with me that the world that we live in is not ideal, and more, that your life is not ideal, that some of your relationships are messed up, and that you make bad choices at times that hurt other people, and sometimes people make bad choices that hurt you. And if you would agree that there is something wrong, and that we live in a world and you live a life somewhat separated from God, then here's the good news. Now we know what caused it. Now we have a diagnosis: sin. And when you have a diagnosis, you can begin to figure out the cure. And guess what? God created a cure for this. This is treatable. And in the next 2 videos, we're going to get into it. Before we do, there's something really important I've got to ask you. Have you ever recognized, have you ever been humble enough to acknowledge that you sin? That like paint, you've gotten it on you, and more. Have you ever been humble enough to acknowledge that it's messed some things up? Have you ever sat and taken a little bit of a moral inventory and just recognized how even if you think of yourself as a pretty good person, you're still part of the problem. You still get your paint all over this world. And one more thing to think about. Have you ever considered that your sin currently destines you for a life separated from God now and for eternity, and that you need someone to intervene to get this straightened out. Until you come to terms with the reality of our separation from God, you can't embrace the good news that is the solution.
Well, Chris's message was a good one and a hard one at the same time. The good part is that we now know what is messing up our lives. It's the sin that he talked about. And we know there's a cure for the sin that's messing up everything. And that's the good news, that we know that. The harder part of this is getting real with yourself and asking yourself if you're aware of your own sin. Because it's really easy to look at everyone else's and point to what everyone else is doing wrong. But we have to be just as willing to admit that just like that paint, we've got sin on us too that we just can't get off. And maybe it's causing bigger problems in your life than you realize. Our team is going to sing and give you some time to process. Maybe you've heard some things today that you really need to consider. Maybe you need to take some time to do that moral inventory that Chris was talking about. If so, it might be worth considering a few questions. First, how is your sin affecting your life and the relationships around you? And second, how is your sin keeping you separated from God? Maybe the shame and guilt of that sin is keeping you from bringing it to God. Well, I want to tell you that you don't need to worry about that. God doesn't see the shame. He just sees you, and he wants to be with you. So take advantage of this time. Bring those things before God. Talk to him about it. Maybe use this as a time of confession, and then consider what God might be saying to you.
Father of kindness, you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness, you have filled me with peace. Giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing. Faithful you are, faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are, all your promises are yes and amen. Yeah, all your promises are yes and amen. Beautiful Savior, you have brought me near, brought me from the ashes. You have broken every curse. Blessed Redeemer, you have set this captive free. Lord, I can't help but sing. Hey! Faithful you are, faithful forever set this captive free. My chains are gone, my fear is gone, Lord. I know you are faithful, I know you rescue me. And I will rest, yeah, in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest, yeah, in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. Come on. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. Faithful you are, faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are, all your promises are yes and amen. Yes and amen. Faithful you are, faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are, all your promises are yes and amen. 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 For I know you are faithful, and I know you are good. Yeah, I know you are faithful, and I know you are good. The cry of my heart be, I know you are faithful, and I know you are good. And it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Oh, I know you are faithful, and I know you are still in control. Yeah. Sing it. Oh, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. 'Cause I know you are faithful, and I know you are still in control. Yeah. How can I say it is well Let your peace wash over me. 'Cause I need you now more than ever. Teach my soul to sing. My God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. Sing it is well, indeed it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. Sing, my God is still in control. My God is still in control. 'Cause I believe it. Father God, no matter what happens around us, no matter the storms that rage around us, Lord, the grief and the shame we feel, our loneliness or our isolation, Father God, we will still stand on this truth that you are in control, God. That our hope is built on a rock that can't be shaken, God. We believe that, Father. We believe that, God. Amen.